Hello, everybody, or Die Show. I am your host, Randi-lee. On today's episode, I am going to be talking to Dr. Rita Louise. Welcome, Dr. Rita. Super excited to have you on the show.
Hey, it's nice to be here with you and your listeners, viewers, whatever they are.
A little bit of both.
Just, share whatever happens to come up during our conversation.
Yes, that's my favorite way to do it. I don't want to pre-plan a conversation. But of course, we do start with the same question every show, which is, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay, so I am a naturopathic physician and with a PhD in natural health counseling, and then I work as a medical intuitive, which is in essence a person that is psychic that works with people with their health related issues. And so it might be physical health, but I also have a lot of people that come to me because they're having challenges in their relationships, or challenges in their lives, and they want to get some insights into what's going on so that they can better navigate their life.
Very cool. I am a big fan of naturopathic doctors. I actually have been telling my cousin to go see one because it's just like a different view of your health. So I'm a big fan of that. So what kind of mental health have you, we're just gonna dive right in the deep end. What kind of mental health have you struggled with?
Okay, so, so I grew up in a very dysfunctional family and definitely suffered trauma. And in the last few years have come to realize just how deep that trauma was. And now I have actually words to tie to it, so CPTSD would be one. The one that I don't like, which apparently I have to deal with, is some issues with codependency, which is like,
but you know what? As long as you know it, you can try to help yourself with it, right?
Right, but it's still one of those, like, I don't want that title thing, and I don't want it to define me. But what I have found, you live your life, and on the outside, I seem like a very successful person. I've written 6 books. I have a training program. I had a radio show for 10 years. I have clients. I've spoken at events. I've done radio shows all over the place, so that all works. But there is just so much, I get in my own way. How's that?
I like that, yeah.
And what I have come to discover is I get in my own way because I've not addressed the trauma that I experienced. And so it kind of keeps me, even though I'm like so not a box person, it keeps me in a little bit of box. Yeah. And so, I'm working on moving through that. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. But but when you go into it, I think you have to recognize that you have to walk through the valley of death to get to the other side, and experience the healing that is possible.
Gets a little bit worse before it gets a whole lot better.
Yes, ma'am.
I love how you said that you didn't want it to define you, that codependency term, because I think that's a lot of people's trouble when they're dealing with their mental health, is they don't want any kind of mental health label because they don't want that to define themselves. And I mean, for myself, that was an issue that I dealt with. I think a lot of people do before we come to the realization that it doesn't define us. It is this much of who we are. So, but I love the way you said that, because people who are listening right now might be feeling that same way. Like, I haven't went to the doctor because I don't want people to think I'm crazy. Like, that's usually the go-to, right? Oh, that person's just crazy. No.
I own the crazy part, so that's easy and okay.
Yes, I was about to say that. I always tell my kids, I'm like, I'm taking back the word crazy. I'm okay with it. My crazy is my uniqueness. Other people might not agree with me, and that's fine. They don't have to.
But one of the things that I've been finding out is that, certain things that I do or certain behaviors that I have or reactions to things going on, I'm not even sure how to say this. It's like not everybody responds in the same way, So if you
Yeah.
grew up in a secure household and there was love and nurturing going on, apparently, this is what I've been told. Apparently, those people don't react that way and they don't try to navigate life by ensuring things are a certain way so that they can be safe because they feel safe, and until you sit there and go, oh, like regular people don't do that.
I have had so many of my own moments where I'm like, oh, people don't do it the same way I do it. Oh.
Uh-huh.
And
I mean,
actually,
because to me that's just
it's
how it
right.
is and
Yeah.
who you are. And what do you mean? Like, example, I have a fairly new boyfriend and he would just like get in the car and go to the store and wouldn't come and say, hey, I'm going to the store. And I'd like go looking for him and then not freak out, but get upset. It's like, well, he should be able to do that. And you should not necessarily get upset. And it's like, well, don't people do that? I mean, it was just so outside of my world.
Yeah. That's a great example because it's something that's so small, so insignificant, really.
Yeah.
But if that's not in our brain as being a small, insignificant thing, it can be a big problem.
Yeah, it's been a little bit challenging.
Feels like you're working through it though, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and it just seems like as you work on it, it just things get better. Things that maybe, I'll say irritated you or triggered you before become less triggering, and there
Yeah.
is this path, and so just speaking from my own experience, um, I could go down the rabbit hole, and be in this funky place where it's like, it would take me some time to just get out of my own way and like come back to the surface of the planet, and through the work and it's great. It's like, wow, it only took me like an hour to recover and not a week,
Yeah.
which just seemed incredible, and now I find that I don't even go down the rabbit hole,
Ooh,
which is
yay.
all right most of the time. All right. And if
It's
I
all
do
good.
go down, it's not like I'm in the depths of the rabbit hole, and hell's like right there next door. Um, and I think that's one of the messages that I like sharing with people is that healing is possible, change is possible, and you don't have to walk around miserable or constantly being triggered by things going on with people that or situations that you're in.
Mhm. I love that. Let's explore that a little more because
Okay.
I like that. So let's start with when did you decide to start trying to heal? When did you go, okay, this isn't working for me. How I'm living my life clearly isn't working for me. I got to do something.
Uh, when I was 12.
Hey, that's a valid answer.
No lie, no
That's
lie.
a valid answer.
But I have a but, because again, I thought I was doing pretty good, have all this stuff going on. But then I was in a relationship with a gentleman who was he a complete and total utter narcissist? Was he just a drunk? I don't know, but he was the gaslighting king of the world. I mean, it was just really bad.
All right, hold
And
on. I'm going to interject one quick second just because not everybody knows what the term gaslighting is. So
mhm.
can you explain it to everybody so that we're all on the same page?
Yeah, and so there's something that happens, and so then maybe you confront them about it, ask them a question about it, and they just deny, and tell you some altered version of reality, like, oh, well, I didn't drop that glass on the floor. It was the dog. It's like, dude, it was on the counter and the dog was only like, 6 inches tall. Come on. And so in your mind, you're like reeling because you want to believe that person is not going to just lie to your face. And so it just creates this discord inside of you, and it's crazy making.
Sorry, didn't mean to like stop your train of thought. Just it's such an important term to understand for the whole situation. So continue.
Thank you. And so I finally got rid of him. And one of the things, and so I was watching a lot of YouTube videos, and there's just so much information out there, and I'm a pretty hardcore researcher. So it's like, okay, well, if you're going to heal yourself, you really need to educate yourself on what you've just been through.
Yeah.
And so as part of that process, I came to the realization that an ex-husband of mine was pretty narcissistic. And so now I'm going back in my history and realized that I had multiple relationships with pretty narcissistic men. A number of my close friends were also pretty narcissistic. And it went back to my family of origin, which, I thought I was done with that, and it opened up this whole new world of healing. And I'm like, yay.
Oh, I have to revisit this stuff that I thought I was done with.
Pretty much. But, I think a lot of what I worked on before was more external things. For example, when I was young, I don't want to say I was quiet. I was extremely shy. So for me and you to have this conversation, for me to stand up in front of a room of 500 people to give a presentation, that was never going to happen. And
apparently it was gonna
eventually, having a radio show, it's like, and so that was something that I've just worked on a lot, and not being weird and owning that, okay, I am weird, but, I'm weird in a good way. And that kind of thing. But I never apparently addressed the internal part that was going on.
Okay.
Which, I mean, I do psychic work, I do a lot of research on stuff, I work with clients all the time with their relationship stuff and their personal stuff, and I was oblivious and blind to it.
But that to me is a pretty common theme amongst people. It's really easy to identify things in other people or know what somebody else should do, but to do that for ourselves, that's nothing. Because I think it's that looking in the mirror. I think it's that you need to look at yourself in the mirror honestly. That is not an easy thing to do.
No. And so, my new book, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist, opens up with you really having to take a look at you and your family of origin and how you fit in and, attachment styles, so that you can really evaluate yourself and go, yeah, maybe there's some stuff I need to take care of for me, because because the book is really written for people that seem to find themselves, finding the rotten apple at the bottom of the barrel, and have this really bad relationship picker, but they're getting into the relationships for some reason and really trying to get them to take ownership of what they're bringing to the table. Because when you're in a relationship, it's not just what they do, it's what you bring as well. Good, bad, and indifferent.
It's true. Yeah. I had a chance to read your book, and I have to say, it's a heavy read. Like,
in a kind of fun way.
Oh, I'm not saying it wasn't good. I was enjoying it. Let me finish. But like, it's not like when I would pick up. So yesterday I just wrote my review on Preternatural. And it's just a fun horror, completely fiction book. Super easy read. You can pick it up quick, right? Because you don't need to really think about, or like you said, evaluate yourself at all. You're just reading for the fun of reading. Your book, and again, I enjoyed it. This is not, I'm not knocking it. Your book, though, when I'm reading it, I can't just sit and read it for 2-3 hours because there's so much information to absorb, right? And I loved that you started with the attachment theory and stuff, because I mean, I had learned about it in school, but that was like 10 years ago. So it was great for me to read it again, go like, oh yeah, that's what that means, right? Oh, okay. Because if not, then I would have been like guessing at some of the terminology. So it's great because as heavy as the book is and as information based, right? Because it's a nonfiction, it's information. Anybody can pick it up and understand what you're trying to say. That's what I love so much about it. I told my aunt, I'm like, you should tell this, won't name names, you should tell this person to read it that you know, just because I think they need it. Mm-hmm. Because yeah, anybody can pick it up and understand what you're trying to tell them about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a super heady technical book.
No, emotionally heavy.
Yeah, well, crying is a response that I've gotten from a number of people, because again, it makes you look at your stuff and sometimes you just don't want to. And I've had several people say, well, I tried to read it, but I had to put it down because it was just bringing up so much.
Exactly. It's emotionally heavy, but anybody can read it. Like, it's not like you're going to read it, look at these words and go, I have no idea what the heck you're trying to say. You explain it in a way that any person could understand it, which is great. But yeah, be prepared. Maybe have a box of tissues with you, have like a little journal with you, and really dig into it, because it's going to crack that can of worms open.
Well, you know, and a couple of people have said that it just seems a little bit raw, you know, and, but, you know, so I like to write. And it's part of my healing. And so as I was doing my own healing, it's like, oh, this, you know, and I'm very in tune to listening to spiritual guidance. And so not much after I started researching, they were like, you need to write a book about this. I'm like, okay, you know, so then I went into like really deep research mode, you know, but I learned so much and I gained so much out of it. But I was also like in the throes of working through it. I mean, there's some stuff that I would write up, you know, and I'd be like, da, 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 type. And then I would read what I wrote and just start crying, because it was like, take that knife and stick it in my heart.
Yeah, you're kind of like slapping yourself in the face as you're going.
Pretty much.
Yeah, but writing is so therapeutic, which is why I said when you're reading your book, have your little journal there with you and write it out right away. Like, I mean, that's why the name of the show is Write or Die, right? Like, writing is so therapeutic. All right, so you, taking us back a little bit, so you figured out that you did a lot of external work and you needed to do the internal work.
Correct.
How did you go about doing that?
And so, well, it's kind of, you know, weird synchronistic thing. So I contacted a counselor here who happened to be specialized in trauma therapy. So I live in Podunk, East Texas, you know, where we have a Walmart and a Lowe's and a Kroger, which is a supermarket, you know, and we have a Starbucks now. So we're on the map. We have a Starbucks now.
We recently got one too.
And, you know, and so the main counselor there happened to be a trauma specialist. And so, and I started going to see him because I was with the psycho-alcoholic boyfriend guy, and I was losing my mind trying to deal with him or help him because he was not functional, you know. So, and then I got rid of him and have been seeing him, you know, still, you know, so that has really helped. One of the things, and I use this line a lot, is, you know, you grow up in a dysfunctional family, and so you learn, you know, this is how the world is, you know, and you get programmed to, this is how the world is, this is how you're supposed to be, you know, this is how people act. again, only to find out that maybe maybe that's not an absolute, and so I feel like one of the things he's really helped me with is understanding what right looks like, because
Okay.
it's like, okay, so this happened. Should I be upset?
Yeah.
I mean, an example, I had a girlfriend who we were supposed to go do something, and now it's like 6 o'clock, and I'm texting her, hey, are we still on? Blah, blah, blah. And she doesn't respond to me. And then
Oh,
I talked to her a few days later, oh, my phone was off, but we had a plan,
yeah.
so I felt really dissed about the whole thing. And I'm like, but I'm like, but see, for me, it's a pattern. It's like, okay, you've hurt my feelings, but now I'm going to re-engage you in a relationship.
Yeah.
And, and I'm like, well, this is what happened. It's like, do I need to just take a step back, and like not be her friend? I put her in purgatory. That was my comment. It's like, she can be over there and I'll be friendly to her because I really like her
Hmm.
personality, but I don't like her behavior.
Okay.
In that way, as far as like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go do this, and then like beyond flaking on you. Like
Yeah.
so, and she's repeated that behavior with me several times, and so she's still in purgatory. And if I see
Yep.
her someplace, I enjoy her. Bless you.
Sorry about
Um,
that.
but in that moment, I wasn't really sure what I should do or how I should feel about the whole situation, because my normal pattern would be, okay, and then I'd get over it and not
Yep.
feel hurt anymore in that, about it, and then re-engage and then get hurt again.
Yes. Yeah. So setting healthy boundaries.
That's like a foul, however many letter word.
Oh, boundaries. Oh, and healthy ones? That's scary. But it is a really important part, at least for my healing, and
Hmm.
probably for a lot of people, to set those healthy boundaries.
Well, I have, I'm going to say a number of girlfriends that have been in not good relationships, and they won't re-engage in relationships. And one of the things that I found for myself was that, especially if you have chronic relationship issues, you can't really work through them if you're by yourself. You can't have boundaries by yourself.
Yeah, there's no point of a boundary if there's nobody to
Boundary
put them.
against.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like putting up a fence when no one's trying to get in your yard.
Yeah.
Not stopping anyone, no one's trying to get in.
And so, but there's a lot of things, that has to do with that healing process, in my opinion, that really, there really need to be other people,
Yeah.
versus just going and hiding and isolating from the world. And a lot of people choose that path. And
Yeah. I'm going to say that's an unhealthy coping skill for people to hide, because then they're still not living their life, really, if they're hiding.
exactly.
So, yeah, I like the way that you put that. So, you started doing that internal work. What is one of the coping skills that you learned that really, or one of the techniques that you learned that really, really helped you with it?
I mean, so I've really started working on a mindfulness practice, which includes breathing, um, because when I get triggered, if something happens, it's like I'll go into this whole rumination thing, and so, I think really paying attention to what's going on and raising my awareness, it's like, okay, I'm ruminating now. Like I maybe don't recognize that I'm triggered, but I'll recognize that I'm ruminating. And it's like, oh, I'm ruminating. So ruminating is thinking about something that's happened versus worrying, which is thinking about something that hasn't happened. So
I'm a ruminator.
I'm a ruminator.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that jerk. What did he do that to me? Why didn't he pick that towel up? Man,
Yeah.
I'm
I'm a ruminator.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I recognize it's like, oh, I'm doing that, but usually that's the path to the rabbit hole.
Yes.
And, and so I try to catch myself, and then like bring my mind back, go find something to do, meditate, breathe. Um, one skill that was shared with me that I actually find works, that kind of makes you go, I don't even know why this works, is to give yourself a break from it. So if you're ruminating, you can say, you know what, I'm not going to think about this right now. I'll think about it at 5 o'clock, or I'll think about this tomorrow, and give myself the opportunity, and just taking it and moving it over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, well, I'm not thinking about it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I had somebody else tell me a very similar type of thing, with in regards to their grief, is that I can't think about it all the time. So what this person did was say, whatever, at 7 o'clock at night, every night, that's when I'll sit down and I'll think about it. And I'll, if I need to, I'll take the picture of the person or whatever their process is. But that's the time that I'm going to give myself to sit there and cry it all out and really give into that,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was kind of interesting. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. But now you're the second person to kind of give that idea of saying, I'm not doing it now. I will think about that then.
It is really weird. I was like, oh yeah, whatever, but it actually works. And just here sitting there talking to you, I do the psychic thing. I'm like, there really is a very energetic aspect to that, which I won't go into because it'll be outside the scope of our conversation.
Oh, now I'm intrigued. Now you maybe have to tell me later.
Okay. But it really works. And actually, I've shared that with a couple of my clients, and they're like, holy crap, it works. So it must work.
Yeah, I can't explain why, but this person said it worked. Now you're saying it works. So there's something to it. I don't know what it is, but.
And it's like totally super simple. You would think that, you're trying to get something to happen and it should be really complicated.
Yeah.
Like, my counselor is trying to teach me like somatic things, like look at the color of the trees and, hear the birds. It doesn't work for me that great, and, but thinking I'm going to think about it later, which I really do is go, you know what? You're thinking about this too much. So you could just like worry about that tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just done.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is that simple. And then for me, I never remember to think about it later.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess it depends what the thought is supposed to be about.
Well, I think if I do think about it later, it's not in the same energy of it. Like I'm not in that
yeah, because you've given yourself that like the time.
Yeah, and you can readdress it from a more adult, mature place versus that triggered, funky place.
Yes. That's a great point to it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what codependency is. Not that we're defining you by that term, but.
And so I've been in like these whole like giant writing series of articles. And so I just am finishing releasing one about healing trauma. And then I have this whole series that I just did about relationships. Like, should I stay in a relationship or go? And am I happy? God, those were triggering. And and now I'm working one on complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Blah, blah, blah.
a big one.
And I had this whole list, and so like that's the key article, and then I have all these sub articles, so who knows how many that's going to be. And then another key thing was going to be writing about codependency, but I kind of pushed that way to the back. But
and
for
now
the
I'm
most
like,
part,
let's pull it forward.
I know. So this is what I know. Okay, so we're all familiar with the fight or flight mechanism, where we fight our way out of a situation or we run away. And people that experience trauma, especially complex trauma, have also what's called the freeze response. And it's kind of like a deer in the headlights, where you just stop and you look and try to play dead. And many times with those individuals, they suffer from what's called dissociation, where you're like, your mind is over there. So people that ruminate a lot, oftentimes are dissociated. Just saying. I'm not saying you, just saying in general. Anyway, so this guy, Peter Walker, I think is his name, came out with a fourth stress response, but it's not innate like those other three. It's a more of a learned stress response, and it's called fawning. And so, yeah, I read it.
This is new to me.
It is fairly new. Again, it's not tied as much with the innate biochemical ones of fight, flight, or freeze. And basically, fawning is you're going to do something to make the other person happy or avoid punishment. And and so his thought is that you learn this fawning response usually before you're able to walk. And so it is built into you as you get older, and it just is so ingrained in who you are and your personality that it's just what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so based on that response, that's where we find people that are people pleasers, where they'll tell you that they're going to, help you do stuff, even though inside they don't want to do it.
They don't have healthy boundaries.
They don't have healthy boundaries. And so if you take the people pleaser mentality and make it just a little bit more dysfunctional, that's where you find your codependents, where they will not listen to what they want or what they need and are more externally focused. Yeah,
I can think of somebody now that you've explained it this way. There's a name, I'm not going to say it, but there's a name popping in my head right now. I'm going, oh, they are, or at least they were. I don't know if they still are. They were definitely in a codependent relationship twice.
But they're more externally focused, and they're more concerned about taking care of the people around them, or their partner or whatever, at their own detriment. And so, they'll, they're hungry, and there's one piece of chicken left and they're still really hungry. But if the other person says they want it, whether or not they're really still hungry or not, they will give it away.
Yeah.
And that's a very simplistic.
That's a great way to explain it in just like simple terms.
So there's a level of self, I want to say deprecation, but that's not the word. Where you just don't take care of yourself. You don't ask yourself, what do I want? What do I need? And so asking someone who has codependent tendencies, what do you want for dinner? Where do you want to go today? I mean, it's like the world is freaking coming to an end. It's like, well, I don't know. What do you want to do? And so they're, so if you have friends or family members, if you ask them, what do you want?
Yeah.
And they can't do it, or it triggers them, or they freeze up or whatever, then they probably are somewhere stuck in that people pleasing / codependent behavior. So it's not even about as much about boundaries, even though that's a huge part.
Yeah.
But they don't take themselves into consideration. They're at the bottom of the list. And so there's like self-esteem issues tied to it, self-worth issues tied to it.
Yeah. A whole lot of stuff goes into that.
Yeah.
Interesting. So how have you been dealing with this revelation that you have codependency?
It's been challenging.
Clearly.
And so I think you know, when you're doing healing work, you kind of unfold layers, you know, and other things come up, you know. So I feel like uh, I had worked pretty well through the whole rabbit hole rumination thing. And I was actually feeling pretty happy on the inside, like on a daily basis. And it's like, wow, this is,
That's good.
there's a sun out there. Ooh.
Yeah.
And then something happened and all this codependency stuff came up. And so that's something that I'm actually actively working on. And
Okay.
it is challenging, you know, because it's kind of like boundaries, you know, you don't have to sit there and worry about somebody else if you're by yourself,
True.
you know, and then you can just sit there and go, well, what do I want to do? Well, I want to do this or I want to do that. And you don't have to worry about what they may think or what they may want or what they may feel.
Yeah.
That is going, that you're going to sit there and say, okay, well, you know, I was going to, you know, go
Yeah.
on a trip to here, but you know, you don't want to, so now I'm not going.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I definitely don't have that one. I just tell my husband, this is what I'm doing. Too bad. So I'm good there, but I'm definitely a ruminator. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I like that word. It's fun to say. So
It
what
makes
would
you sound really smart. No.
it does. I used to always say as a teenager, because I've always enjoyed using really big terminology. And so as a teenager, I'd say something like, say, ruminator. And people look at me like, what? Wait, what? I'd be like, big words make me sound smart. That's all I'd say as a teenager. Yeah, big words make me sound smart. I forgot that I used to say that until you said it there. So like, what would you tell somebody that is listening right now and they're kind of going maybe through a little revelation listening and going, oh, I'm kind of maybe a ruminator. I might have some codependency issues.
I mean, I think two pieces. You know, one is educate yourself on what's going on. You know, in this situation, a certain level of knowledge is power. You know, especially if you're in a dysfunctional relationship. Um, you know, you can't understand it. Like, if you don't know what gaslighting is, then you can't start to recognize it that someone's doing it.
Yeah.
Very quick story. So when I'm doing all this research, you know, and I'm thinking about, you know, psycho guy, and you know, and I'm like, I'm reading an article, and so they have like gaslighting and gray rock and all this terminology that's kind of tied to dealing with narcissists in general. And I'm like going, okay, well, I'll look this up, and I'm like, there's even a word for it. I mean, it was just amazing. It's like, wow, this is just what I experienced, and there's a word for it. You know, so getting to understand it, so then you can start looking at what's going on in your life and looking at those patterns and start to change them. Because if you can't see it, you can't fix it. You know, and in a very healing way, uh, recognition and acknowledgement that there's an issue and what the issue is like 50%.
Yeah. You can't get help if you don't realize that you need help.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. So tell people where they can find, well, not just that one book, but all of your books.
Okay. So the book that we're really discussing is The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist. Have Kleenex, have a journal. I like that.
Yep.
It's available on Amazon.com. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, all of my books are available on Amazon, as well as my webpage, which is soulhealer.com, SOULHEALER.com. And on my webpage, there's just a ton of articles. And, you know, in the last, you know, 4 or 5 months, I've really been delving into this whole relationship, trauma, healing. You know, probably there's another book going to come out of it, or or I'm going to do a revised version of the current one, but it'll be like 500 pages long.
Part A, part B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but soulhealer.com, you know, and if people sign up for my newsletter, they can get, you know, the new articles that come out every week. Because like I said, I'm just finishing up this healing trauma series, which has been about 15 articles. And then I have one that talks about relationships. Should I stay or should I go? And then the one after that is really going to be dealing with complex trauma, like CPTSD, and addressing that. I don't know. I just kind of started on that. So that's a new little path that's opening.
Awesome. And where can people follow you? I mean, we know your website, but is there some social media they can get on?
Yeah, I mean, on Facebook, I'm Dr. Rita Louise on Facebook. You know, I used to have a Twitter account, but I deleted that. It got to be
a lot of people
political.
a lot of people are going away from Twitter.
You know, so that's kind of it. You know, I'm not a millennial, so I don't do like Instagram or.
Yeah. I have Instagram. I don't use it that much, but I've really gotten into TikTok since COVID happened. My animals have their own TikTok account. And I just started one today for the show to talk, you know, little snippets of mental health every day.
How cool.
Yeah. Excellent. So the links to follow Dr. Rita and to get a hold of her books will be in the description down below, because we need to support each other in this journey. And even if you are like, oh, that doesn't apply to me, you might know somebody that it does. So keep aware of what is out there, so that if you come across somebody, you can be like, so I listened to this show and you might want to go back and listen to it. Maybe get the book. You know, just leave the book on their kitchen table and be like, oh, no, it's just for you.
Can I throw in one last little
Of course.
Yeah. You know, it's our job to make ourselves happy. And so if we're in a situation where we are consistently not happy, then it's our responsibility to change it versus sit around and hope and pray that things are going to be different one day.
I love that. And we're not saying it's easy. We're just saying
sometimes you have to make some really hard choices, like this isn't working for me, I need to go.
Yeah, that is great advice. And on that amazing last note, we will say goodbye and thank you so very much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful.
Hi, everybody. That was such a great conversation. I love when the conversation just like flows so naturally and such good energy. Awesome. So be sure, of course, to check out her links in the description below. Also, if you are a part of the Patreon team, there will be some behind the scenes footage of after our interview. We had a little small chit chat afterwards, so you can check that out as well. Hit that like and subscribe button here at the channel so you do not miss an episode, because every guest has amazing advice and amazing experiences to share with everybody. So be sure to stay up to date with all of our amazing episodes. And we do have the merch store, of course. 10% of the proceeds go back to the Canadian Mental Health Association, or if you purchase from our special line, they go to the addiction services. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly.